No. Had a beef stick for breakfast and then I had a ham sandwich for lunch. Now I'm hungry.
All right, we'll call the City of Kewaunee Special Common Council meeting on Thursday, June 1st, 2023 to order. Let the record show all members are present with the exception of Brown, excused, and Shelton is on speakerphone. Item 2, consider an act on resolution terminating tax increment district number 2. So is this where Adam takes over?
I can take over.
All right, Adam.
All right. So
Adam from Barrett is here, Wendy, just so you know.
yeah, so I'm Adam Hilham. I started with Barrett here in January of 2023. So I actually was previously before that kind of on your side of the desk. So I was a city manager in Platteville for 3 years. Then I was in Marshall for 3 years and then Hobart. So I'm from the Green Bay area originally. My wife actually grew up in East Croc, so she's a former Kewaunee resident. Her last name was Blonairs, if that name rings any bells. Her uncle actually used to run Sabota's, was the company that he ran. Mike, yes. So know this area pretty well. So now we're back in the area, and the goal is to kind of be a resource for Joanne and the rest of the team here with anything kind of going on. So this was one of them, was the potential of looking at needing to close out your tax increment district number 2. So what you have in front of you is kind of the timeline that has to be followed in order to do that. So right now, obviously, we're at June 1st, 2023. So this is the opportunity essentially for the city council to adopt the official TID termination resolution. That's kind of the first step that needs to occur, is now that as the projections are showing as of 2021, we were projecting that at the end of 2022, there would be enough revenue to essentially meet all of the expenditures and look at closing it out. So the first step is the council has to do a resolution, which then gives Joanne the ability then to submit to the DOR. What you kind of see in the packet here is the resolution that potentially would be adopted tonight. And then the form that she submits after that then is the PE 223. And that's where she has to then work with not only the county, but then the assessor in formalizing dates that goes in here. It goes to the DOR. The DOR then starts what is called the 6-month clock, where once the resolution, if it is adopted tonight, you have 6 months, which basically is November 30th, to have everything completed. And what that is you have to fill out the PE 110, that is the accounting form, and then you have to have a final audit done. So the team, basically Joanne, will be working with me, and then the auditors will be looking at having them complete. They have to do a final TID audit. When that is completed, all of that information then goes to the DOR. They basically review it, and as long as everything kind of checks out, they give you the rubber stamp. And as of November 30th, then they say the TIF district is closed. And then the next following year, they then basically take everything off the books. So they work with the assessor to make sure then that that information is done, and that then happens.
So that audit is done this year again, separate from the one that they did in the beginning of the year.
Correct. So
Okay.
right. You have to work with your auditing service, and they basically do a separate audit that is just on the TIF.
Okay.
So that's something that obviously Joanne, when we get to that, I can work with you and kind of be a part of those conversations if you need me or not. You can kind of talk about that. But that basically is the process. So what we're kind of looking at tonight is the council to make the kind of decision to move forward with terminating the TIF. And that would require the passage of a resolution then that starts kind of the process going forward.
Would there be any benefit to extending the TID at all, or could we if we wanted to?
So that is a conversation that you could have. Potentially you are allowed 1 year. You could look at doing a 1-year extension for affordable housing. So those would be conversations that we would have to have. The only thing we'd have to look at with that is you have an active TIF. So that's one option that you can consider. Is right now there's tax increment district number 3. So if you wanted to extend that additional year, you could. Those are the conversations where you'd have to look at that and kind of have some conversations, I think, as a staff as to what the plans are for. Do you have anything kind of in the works for affordable housing that potentially could fall into that? We're gonna have to look at the audit as far as, if the expenditures have been done. There's some questions there as to whether or not we passed that point, because technically what are we at? We're on 2023 we're looking at right now. So we already had 2021 and 2022. Technically, where the expenditures are met, you do have the responsibility as a municipality to close the district if you can. So
I'm okay with that.
Affordable housing.
right now, that definition is vague. So what I will tell you right now is the DOR has no real definition. So for instance, in Platteville, what we did is when we closed our TIF district number 4, we did the 1-year extension that essentially put about $250,000 of tax increment into a special fund. What they decided to do with that as a council was target, because Platteville is a college community, they have a lot of rental homes that were single family homes that were converted into rental. So they actually created kind of grant programs where they had 2. They would do one where essentially if you were converting the home back to 100% single family, there was a grant that you could go after for that. And then they also targeted homes that were 1950 and older and allowed a kind of reimbursement grant to bring things up to speed. So whether your roof was needed to be replaced. So that was one option that they can do. Other municipalities have used it to look at trying to reduce housing requirements. So if you have a developer coming in, they potentially would use those funds to offset, the sewer connection that occurs in order to plug in. You would use those funds to kind of offset that. They would apply some form of grant or potentially, as within TIF districts, a developer incentive. So there are a lot of opportunities and options that you can do. And as of right now, the DOR has not really regulated what that is. So the definition is a little bit open.
What are the boundaries in TIF 2? Is the marina in TIF 2?
Oh, that's a good question.
Salmon Harbor?
I don't.
Is Hathaway Landing, is that in TIF 2? Goodbye. You live in Kewaunee. What would your recommendation be on this and why?
If I lived in Kewaunee, what would be my recommendation?
And why?
So what I would tell you is there's a couple of things you got to factor in. So one is being new. The first question I would ask is, what are your relationship, obviously, with the other taxing entities? Because that's going to be something that plays into this. Is to do a 1-year extension, you do have to have support from all of those taxing entities. So that would be the school district, the county, and obviously the technical college. If that relationship is good and they understand why potentially you would want to extend it, it's not a bad option to consider. Because again, the end result is if you're trying to bring in more residential housing or update something, that all benefits all of those taxpayers at the end of the day. For them, they have to make the decision that for another year, they're not going to see that increment technically hit their books. So to me, I would tell you if the opportunity is there, you want to look at it.
Well, let me ask a different question. And so right now with TIF 3, I'm going to be having on the finance committee, they're going to be looking at possibly extending the boundaries of the TIF 3 that would include our marina, this Fisherman's Point in the center of the harbor, and the Yacht Works Marina, and they're doing a multi-million-dollar development there. So would we be better off trying to extend that boundary as opposed to extending the length of this?
I would say if you have that opportunity, yes, because you have.
Either way, we're working with the same taxing jurisdictions trying to get it.
The reason why I would say that probably is a better option is because if I remember, TIF number 3 is relatively new. So you've got the expenditure period working in your favor.
Correct.
Whereas with this, you've got a 1-year opportunity.
With nothing on the horizon.
With nothing on the horizon. And now granted, the advantage is right now, and this is why I say right now, because it's so new, the DOR really doesn't have any regulations on it. So it goes into a special revenue fund and you can kind of right now use it for what you want. But what I would say is you kind of hit the recommendation would be on the head is if you have the ability to expand the boundary and look at using that full expenditure period of 15 years, or you're probably in, I think year 2 or 3. So you still got like 13. Yeah. That's going to be a better option.
Especially with no development.
Exactly. Because then if I'm the county or I'm somebody else, I'm going to make that argument in the joint review board meeting when you go through that process as well. You have an after district, so why don't we just target that versus this?
Can we extend it out to the business park or no? Is that too far?
That's a lot of land.
So
I mean, we can't capture every piece of new development going on in the city, but I think what we're doing down with this TID 3, if we can get that boundary extended to capture Yacht Works and up to Kewaunee Fabrication, I would say. Because across the street and a half the way, they're going to be developing over there also.
The business park wouldn't qualify for affordable housing anyway. So even if you added it in TIF 2, it doesn't qualify for affordable housing.
Not for TIF 2, right?
No. So. Okay,
So.
you answered my question. I appreciate.
No,
that.
for sure.
Thank you.
There's
There's
always
any other
options.
questions
No,
regarding TID two?
Mentions the two projects that were completed. Can you refresh our memory? What are the two projects? The two.
Hathaway Landing was one.
Oh, no, so that's where that's a pre-fill, so it's where all TID two projects, so that's
Oh,
everything
so
that
it's
was
not
in the two.
two projects.
Yeah, no, good catch. I could see that, yeah. No, that's everything you did in the
But
two.
what were the projects that were done? I assume Jeff, you don't know, and I'm not.
And Hathaway Landing, I think.
Hathaway Landing.
Hathaway Landing is
one of them, because I was involved with it.
And I think First Street, they did an extension and redid First Street, is what I believe.
Wendy, you gotta raise your hand when you wanna talk next.
It's been up the last 10 minutes.
The other options that you guys have with future tip as well is because of the fact that you're only, by closing this one and you just have tip three, you are well under the 12% requirement that you can create TIF districts. So you've got some options where you could consider being more, if you want to be more project specific TIFs. There are some municipalities that do that. Sturgeon Bay is a good example where they will create TIF districts that are just project based. The downfall with that is when you have that, that's a lot of TIFs. So unless you have the staff, we don't tend to try to recommend that because that puts a lot of pressure on the staff. So generally, the more you can kind of put in a boundary that makes sense, the better. But what that means is you have the opportunity. So with tip three, if something would ever come around that you would want to look at creating another TIF district, you have that capacity right now to do that. So
So long and short of what we're addressing tonight, TID two, closing TID two is in the city's best interest. Is long and short of that. So does anyone have any other questions for Adam? If there are no other questions, then I would entertain a motion to act on the resolution terminating tax increment district number 2.
I'll make that motion.
One second, Bob.
Any further discussion? Take the roll, please.
Yes. I'm just gonna call it Zimmerman.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
Conley.
Aye.
Woznicki.
Aye.
Sheldon.
Aye.
Blaha.
Yes.
Brewster.
Motion carried. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Until we get the audit, is there gonna be any revenues left over coming out of this?
I think I'm coming back. What is it, next Tuesday? Is there some more conversations?
No.
Sandbag it again.
Right? Then you bring the bag of money?
The Brinks truck, yep.
You bring some great options that we can try to go after.
All right, item 3, consider and act on
Thank you.
temporary Class B license for Kewaunee Chiefs baseball team. Concession stand at Kewaunee Park. Thanks, Adam.
You guys have a good
Kewaunee Park located at 506 Lincoln Street on June 9th, 2023. Do I have a motion to
Motion.
approve?
To approve that.
Nelson, is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Item 4, consider and act on change in city holiday schedule regarding December 24th to be observed on December 26th. And December 31st to be observed on the 3rd of July. So that's gonna be a long span. I'm gonna let Joanne explain the thoughts on this. I think this was generated by Heath, but
Well, it was kind of generated by me.
it's a typo on the agenda, first of all. Kind of, because it's gonna be the 31st is moving. You're not gonna have the 31st holiday is gonna be observed on the 3rd of July, are you?
Well. Yes.
Yeah, it'll be like a floating
Well,
holiday.
so Monday, July 3rd, we're open, then we close for July 4th, okay? July 31st, which is actually a Sunday.
December.
Of December. Heath had it in the schedule that we would observe it on the 29th. Okay? I want to move that because the 29th is our last day of the year to collect taxes. So I
To be
would,
open at the
to be
office.
open at the office and collect taxes.
Yeah, we should be. open.
So I would prefer to be open that day and then have July 3rd off. So that's why, I'm suggesting that day.
That makes sense.
So yeah, I guess the wording on the agenda was a little
I
misleading.
would make a motion to approve that, provided it's a little
I'll
clearer.
second that.
But it makes complete
Oh,
sense
yeah,
now that you
I understand.
explained
Any
it.
further discussion? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Are there any announcements?
The windows on the lighthouse are getting replaced. It's really looking nice.
There
They're
you
doing a
go.
really great.
We got a
job.
beautiful weekend. You guys take a walk out on the pier and check it out. If there are no other announcements, meeting adjourned.
There you go. Woo-hoo.
17 minutes.
Bye, bye, Wendy.
Have a good night. See you, Wendy.
Bye-bye.
There,
Like,
two
that
slam
was-
dunk meetings. Who says we can't get